Good morning, good afternoon. Sorry, this is Jen Bonnett with Creative Coast, Executive Director of the Creative Coast and Vice President of Innovation and Entrepreneurship for the Savannah Economic Development Authority. We are here today to talk about the Logistics Technology Corridor and how it got started, where it's at today, and all things logistics technology and why it's important to the Savannah region. And we're hoping that this video is useful for at least a period of time to give new people that come to town or new people that are interested in this space an overview, and so hopefully this will be helpful to a lot of people. So we are going to talk about the overview of the Logistics Technology Corridor, the history, the vision, the leadership. We're going to talk about progress to date, and then what the next steps are moving forward. So the Logistics Tech Corridor, that is mapped to the right, you see is actually the existing corridor as it stands today. It is a strange conglomeration of different towns in the Savannah region along 95 and 16. It does not include the historic district of downtown Savannah. It does not include the islands, and it has some strange area to it, in part because this is a state project, and when you lobby the state, there is a little bit of politics that get involved. But that is the current Logistics Technology Corridor, and for those of you that are interested, we can share a website that will have actually the pure definition of that from which street it ends at perspective. The history is this all really started in the summer of 17. A Senate study led by Senator P.K. Martin out of the Rome area was done around the idea of should Georgia have technology corridors. Technology corridors are used in other states to activate high wage job growth in certain industries in certain key areas, right? And so other states have used technology corridors to activate high wage technology jobs, having tech companies move into those corridors. And so at the time, Georgia had 0 technology corridors, official technology corridors, and Senator Martin studied this, or a group of Congress people did a study the summer of 2017. That led to Savannah being included in that study, and we'll get into who in a little bit, but Savannah was included in that study, and in the fall of 2018, we formed a task force locally to try and help ensure that Savannah got a tech corridor. In May of 28, Senate Resolution 821 was signed, which included 2 technology corridors in the state of Georgia, Augusta for cyber and Savannah for logistics. There is no technology corridor in Atlanta. Just want to point that out. The summer of 2018, really fiscal year 2019, so it starts to get a little confusing because the state government runs on a July to June timeframe. But the summer of 2018, fiscal year 2019, the task force got together and really kind of set a vision and strategy for how to move forward now that we were officially a corridor. The winter of 2019, the task force went and lobbied for expansion of the corridor and lobbied for some Innovation Hub study money. In the summer of 2019, actually really we didn't really get the study money until December of 2019, but we did receive money for the innovation study. And in December of 2019, we also formed a leadership council. We'll talk about that. And then lastly, this summer, we've been able to negotiate an MOU on the extension of the funding for the Innovation Hub study, and the Innovation Hub study has been completed, and we're going to talk about all those things. This is a component, a part of the language from actually the SR 21. Senate Resolution 821, which recognized this these regions as official tech corridors, and I think they do a good job of explaining why we're doing this, or what the goal is, right? So 4-county region in Augusta, parts of 3 counties in Savannah, whereas for the following reasons: the Georgia economy would greatly benefit from further growth in the information technology arena. It is highly desirable to review current state incentives as well as opportunities for future incentives for technology growth. So this does imply that there will be state incentives tied to technology corridors for companies that locate or people that locate. Whereas it would be beneficial to establish specific information technology corridors in this state, and such corridors would directly foster the growth of information technology and innovation through collaborations amongst universities, hospitals, and logistics hubs. So this is like that technology corridors should be focused in sections of the state where that industry is already leading. So Savannah leads in logistics, so let's add a layer of technology so that we can lead in logistics technology. And whereas it would be advantageous for the official corridors to be established in pursuit of state and federal grants. So there is the hope that we will get some funding for these avenues, these corridors as well. So this is the actual parts of the legislation that actually was written up by Senator P.K. Martin out of Rome, out of this study that was done in the summer of 2017. When the task force got together after we became an official corridor, we stated kind of this vision, and that is that Savannah's already a hub for transportation, logistics, and advanced manufacturing. You know, and this is a little out of date, right? We're the 3rd busiest port in the nation, fastest growing, #1 port for export today. We have a actually globally recognized aerospace cluster in the region, and then the you know, we have both 2 Class 1 railroads right into the port, and so that makes us a logistics hub already. Right now, can we add that layer of technology? So the goal of the corridor is really to establish Savannah and the Savannah region and the state of Georgia as a global leader in logistics innovation. And when I think about this, I think about Inc. magazine and Forbes magazine and Fortune magazine writing about Savannah as the place. If you're going to innovate in the logistics space, you better have an office in Savannah, is the way I think about that. And that's the goal. And that's a 5 to 10 year vision, right? That's not today, but that's where we're trying to go. And the task force has been committed to that. Now, how do you do this, right? And so we kind of came up with, and based on my experience community building in Atlanta and at the ATDC and things like that, you know, we kind of looked at this as, okay, if we were realistically going to be a logistics innovation leader in 5 to 10 years, what do you have to do today to get there? Well, first we have to do community building, right? And I've got slides on each of these, so I'm not going to go too far. But how do we cultivate a community, a thriving community of smart people focused on logistics and innovation? Education, how do we ensure that, you know, cradle to grave, people are thinking about what types of jobs are going to be in the logistics space, specifically around innovation as that takes off, right? Acceleration and incubation, right? So what are we doing to accelerate the growth of companies or incubate companies in this space or really innovate in this space? And then lastly, the money, right? What kinds of things have to happen from an incentive and regulatory change perspective, right? And so this is actually a map that was done by Georgia Tech a couple of years ago about the ecosystem that exists already in Savannah, Georgia around entrepreneurship with co-working spaces, capital, the education and social assets. And so how do we expand this into logistics innovation specific meetup groups and things like that? And how do we support logistics innovation? So, you know, how do we community build? and continue the existing work of the Creative Coast, but go deeper into logistics and innovation. Right. Oh, must have there. No. Huh. Oh, I messed up the order. Sorry. So we're going from we're skipping ahead to acceleration and incubation, right? What do we need to do to really accelerate growth for startups? And my two examples here that we've used to go back to the legislature for funding for some of these ideas is, Georgia already leads at this, right? Georgia as a state leads in this, right? Georgia, almost 20 years ago had the insight that this, the corner of, 5th and Spring, which was a hole in the ground and really bad neighborhood, physical hole really, and really bad neighborhood in Midtown Atlanta, could be the vibrant heart of the tech ecosystem in Atlanta, Georgia. And today it is, because the state and the university and the city came together and built Tech Square. And that's the picture to the right. And then more recently, the state funded a cyber center in downtown Augusta, right on the river, to the tune of $140 million of state funding to build those two buildings to activate cyber education and innovation in the Augusta region in support of Army Cyber Command being headquartered out at Fort Gordon there. And so those are two examples of the state and universities coming together to activate companies and innovation through the creation of incubators and innovation spaces. And Savannah probably needs to do something similar. Education, we're talking really cradle through grave here, but there's a model that is used already in the state of Georgia around this concept of an academy. An academy is a cross-institutional partnership, typically led by a research institute that says, we're going to put together a cohesive program that doesn't matter whether you're in 3rd grade, graduated from high school and going to a technical college, going on to a 4-year college, or getting a master's or PhD program. We're going to ensure that we have the right programs for you in an industry that we're pursuing. There's a FinTech Academy in Atlanta associated with Georgia State University. And then of course the first one was the Cyber Academy out of Augusta University. And so what we've been talking about out of the universities that are here, aside from Georgia Tech, which is only really here from a professional development perspective, the research institution in the region is Georgia Southern University. So Georgia Southern would lead the Logistics Innovation Academy in partnership with the other entities that are in the region, including Savannah State, including Savannah Technical College, including the K through 12 systems, and ideally including SCAD, although I will say that the FinTech Academy and Cyber Academy do not include private universities in their innovation academies, but I would like to see that happen here. And lastly, the last bullet for around this vision and community building and the things that have to happen is, what kind of incentives can we offer to companies and or people that move to a corridor? And this is interesting because we wrote all of these and we have drafts. None of this is passed yet, but we have drafts for all of these incentives for people that would relocate, or a company that would relocate to one of the corridors. So this applies to Augusta too. That was intentional with the idea that we could leverage the Augusta community when lobbying at the state level, in addition to the Savannah folks. So the first one is Georgia was a really innovative state and was one of the first states to have an angel tax credit. That got sunsetted at the end of 2018, and we'd like to see it reinstituted. But we'd like to see it reinstituted just for the corridors. So, other parts of the state have a lot of angel activity, especially Atlanta, and can we leverage these tax credits to activate angel investors in the Savannah and Augusta region? The next was to establish a cluster grant program for the technology corridors. And a cluster grant program would probably set aside something like $1 million a year for research and innovation. And this could be anything from like a $5,000 project in third grade to teach kids about logistics, to a startup company partnering with the university to build IP that turns into a proprietary software product or algorithm. Sorry, I'm about to cough. Right, and these would probably be administered through the Centers of Innovation for Logistics. The next two are related. Well, no, sorry, the next one is student loans. So this is more about individuals. This is, can we establish a tax credit to assist with student loan repayment for key technical jobs? So if a person moves from California, so if you go to a state school in Georgia and you did great in high school, you probably don't have that much student loans because you have the Hope Scholarship. But if you went outside of state or lived outside of state, then you probably have some loans. So how can we get people that have typically 3+ years experience to move to the area? And so one idea was if we can assist with student loan repayment. So somebody moves here from California, and we're not giving them cash per se, but they could get zero taxes for the state of Georgia, up to $4,500 a year to go towards their student loans. So they could kind of reduce their, set up their payroll system such that they reduce their Georgia taxes to almost zero. They're getting a tax credit from the state, and hopefully that helps with the student loan process. The next two are somewhat related, or they're similar in thought. One is the R&D tax credit. The other is loss tax credits. These are for companies. So all startup companies lose money 3 to 5 years, realistically. A lot of times they're doing R&D, and they are able to get R&D tax credits for the money that they invest in the research and development, which then will save them taxes later on. But since they're making no money right now, there are no taxes. So those R&D tax credits, you can hold on to them for the future. But what if you could sell them? What if you could sell them to a company that needs an R&D tax credit or needs a credit right now, a tax credit right now? The same with loss tax credits. Your company loses money for several years while you're getting off, so you have this tax credit that gets set up. Why not be able to sell that to a company that's doing well and needs a tax credit? So this would be the ability to set up a marketplace where loss tax credits and R&D tax credits could be sold from startups to companies that were a little further along and maybe needed a tax credit. And the startup gets the cash that they need, and the other company gets some tax burden lifted from them. And these are the types of incentives that we've actually talked about and actually gone as far as pitching the governor and lieutenant governor. None of this has happened this year, mostly due to COVID-19. And obviously, I'm not sure that it will happen in this new year, fiscal year 2021, in large part because of COVID-19 and the state budgets having such shortfalls due to COVID-19. But this is the concept, is how do you incentivize companies and or people to move into the corridors? Leadership. So I put myself up here, although I have to say that I joined late to the team, the Instigators. Keith Fletcher, who has a consulting practice here in Savannah, Georgia, is really the person primarily responsible for getting us this far. He has a relationship with Senator Martin. He talked to Senator Martin when the study first started and said, hey, you really got to think about Savannah. Diana McKenzie with Hunter McLean stepped in and really has been working with Keith for probably the full time since 2017 on this. I was partially active as the head of ATDC, the Advanced Technology Development Center, that has a person here in Savannah. So I'm always following what was going on in Savannah, although I was in Atlanta, and really got involved in June of 2018. And I will say that our organizations supported our time into this effort, but did not necessarily support all the work that we were doing. So this was truly a labor of love for us to get here. And that labor of love goes beyond just these three individuals, but I will say we were the instigators, kind of at this point. We're the co-chair people of the task force. Then there's the task force. Like the instigators, we didn't put people's pictures up here, but all of these people from all of these organizations have been involved to date and more, I guess at this point. But it was individuals. It's individuals making time. It's individuals going to Atlanta and lobbying. And it's really individuals that have been setting this vision and pushing it forward. And, my own experience from Atlanta and other startup cities is that the real heavy lifting is done by entrepreneurs. The real heavy lifting of creating a great community it really happens when private businesses or private individuals get involved to catalyze that action versus universities and government. So this is a necessary part of ecosystem building, and I am thankful to everyone that has served on that task force to date, and those that will hopefully join in the future. Then last fall, we looked around and said, hey, we don't really have everyone's buy-in that we need, right? If the logistics technology corridor, the logistics innovation, if we're really going to lead in logistics innovation, we need C-level executives involved. We need C-level executives at the port and at Gulfstream and at JCB and at some of the third-party logistics companies, in addition to education and economic development and to the people that rallied around the task force. We really need them to get involved. We need them to become informed and enthusiastic spokespeople for the corridor. And we need their buy-in by helping set the strategic vision of where we're headed to really, really be able to move the needle and make sure that this is going to work. So last fall, we formed a leadership council. And I will say it's still very much in the works, but currently, we've had 2 leadership council meetings. We did get derailed, but we're supposed to meet quarterly. But we missed one because of COVID-19, but we've had our second meeting, and it is led right now by the Savannah Economic Development Authority and Georgia Southern University. The port is involved, the airport is involved, Great Dane is involved, Savannah State University is involved, Savannah Technical College is involved, the Georgia Innovation Center for Logistics, Hunter McLean, the Board of Regents is involved. Other people that have been invited to the table and not been able to attend yet include Norfolk Southern, UPS, and Home Depot. So we're looking for global leaders in Georgia that deal with logistics. And we're still seeking more specifically corporate partners to join in this endeavor. So we're looking for more corporations to join the Leadership Council and get involved. But again, this Leadership Council meets quarterly and really is going to help set the strategic vision by which the task force takes action on moving forward. And that's kind of the leadership overview. Our progress to date. So we received $500,000, $400,000 from the state with a $100,000 local match in fiscal year 2020. And we've spent approximately we have approximately $396,000 left. We spent about $104,000 of that money to date. And we have actually gotten the state to agree to roll over that money from fiscal year 2020 to fiscal year 2021. And the goal of that is to identify whether or not this idea of an innovation hub would actually work in Savannah. And so we've done a study with Georgia Southern University, and I'm going to talk about that next, but it's really about an economic impact forecast with what would happen if we actually execute on the things that we've already talked about, the incentives, the acceleration, the community building, and the education. And then a feasibility study for understanding how big an innovation hub should be, what types of resources should be there, and how to move forward. And then the next plan is really the business plan, site selection study. And so the items in italics here have been done. The items that are not in italics at the bottom have not been done. So the next steps are kind of business plan, site selection study, and then design, architecture, rendering, budget stuff. I'm going to go into the study a little bit because the study came out this summer. We did a whole logistics. There's a video out there about the study in detail, but basically there's kind of three main components to the study. The first looked at comparative cities, right? And we compared ourselves to Jacksonville, Charleston, Augusta, Chattanooga, and Greenville, South Carolina. These were important because they're from the similar sized. We're a little bit smaller than Charleston, well, a little bit smaller than most of them. But we compete with them all the time, and we compete with them from a logistics space, especially Jacksonville, Charleston, and Chattanooga from an inland ports perspective. So we wanted to look at what was going on in these cities from an innovation perspective, see how we matched up from an economic perspective and demographic perspective, see what kind of money they've spent on innovation in the last few years and how was it funded and you know, that sort of thing. And then really try and come up with, you know, okay, what do we think about our region versus theirs? And we do rank lower than those cities in many economic measures. And we do rank higher, specifically in the concentration of logistics employment. And we, surprisingly enough, have a higher concentration of software developers than any of those cities aside from us. So that, I found that quite interesting. And I haven't really had the time to drill into that, but I do think part of that could be the scat effect of having such a top-notch design school here. The second part of the study was really about logistics experts, and we interviewed 61 area and industry experts. I will say this part of the process delayed the study by probably 2 months due to COVID-19. You know, we had originally intended to do focus groups. Focus groups on Zoom are not easy. So we ended up moving to entirely individual one-on-one interviews. And we did these 61 area and industry experts. At least half of them are from outside the state of Georgia and are just in the logistics industry or innovation industry. Some of the key findings that they felt were really important was the importance of a strong transportation space system, ample technology talent, and access to capital. Right, and all of these things are key to us being successful, and honestly, all of these things are slightly challenging right now in Savannah, Georgia. So, you know, when I think about things like some of the other projects I'm working on, you know, the remote worker incentives that CETA now offers to get more technology talent here is a component of this. The Bridge Fund that the Creative Coast will hopefully be launching this fall, a new seed fund, access to capital helps with this. And so it's all kind of circular and related. The last part of the study was actually uses this, what they call critical mass rating, that identifies whether or not you can support an innovation space / incubator in your town. And you can kind of get an overview of some of the things that they look at, but at the end of the day, anything above a 26 is a yes, you should go for it. And so we're close, but we did make it. So it does seem that we have the support systems around business development and the economic engine to support an incubator or innovation hub in the region. And that was kind of the end result of the study. So the next steps really are, the expansion of the corridor. So that we intended this past year to try and get the corridor to cover all 5 counties in the region. We're pretty much out of warehouse and manufacturing space in Savannah, Georgia. So we need to rely on our partners to take some of the centers. The jobs that we're hoping to create with these are software jobs, are hardware, IoT, data processing, big data, all that sort of stuff that revolves and solves a problem for the logistics industry, but we still need the logistics industry customers to be here for those new jobs, those tech companies to come in and be successful there. We don't expect to lobby for any of the incentives that we talked about, in part because of where the state's at, but CETA actually has local incentives available to these companies. And then really, per the study, these are the follow-up steps, right? The first is create a plan. So trying to figure out and figure out what our plan is moving forward. The second piece is facilitate corporate engagement. One of the things that the study said is that we should, that this should really be led by industry and supported by government and university. And right now it's being led by government and university. If you look at who's at the head of the council, right? CETA and the creative, CETA and Georgia Southern University. So the mix from the study is 70% corporate and 30% government and university. So we actually need to flop that. We need to get more corporations involved and to get to the right number of players such that we have 70% corporate involvement. We need to identify a core site for innovation. So this is that site selection study that I referred to earlier. And I am starting to work, because it is state money, these things will have to go to RFP. So I'm starting to work on an RFP for that now. One of the things the study said was focus on placemaking. So one of the things that's key about the site is that it can't be standalone, right? It needs to be in a community that is growing and thriving. Techies want to walk to someplace at lunch, want to have dry cleaners and restaurants and bars and banks in walking distance of their office. And so that's kind of what we have to think about is where within Savannah could we place an innovation center that is hopefully close to the port and the logistics sites, but also focuses on placemaking, and that starts to get a little confusing there. We need to be thinking about taking a phased approach. It doesn't make sense to go build an 80,000 square feet building or take over an 80,000 square foot building when we can only support 8,000 square feet of companies right now. So how do we figure out an approach where we can come in and take a footprint of someplace and then grow it from there as this program takes off? One of the things that was really clear was we need to focus on a clear niche within logistics innovation. Logistics is really broad, right? It's a lot of things to a lot of people. And one of the things that we've been talking about is trying to think about how do you brand this as something sexy is, if you look at what Savannah does really well, it's what they would call in the industry intermodal. It's kind of this where things move from the container ship to the train or to the truck, and that integration component. I'm trying to brand it first mile because intermodal is not sexy, but first mile could be considered sexy. There's a lot of talk about the last mile of logistics. Maybe we can be the first mile of logistics. And then lastly, we need to formalize an organization structure, right? All of this has been done to date by volunteers. And what we really need to do is set up a nonprofit entity that can carry this forward and really hone in on the next steps, and take funding from the corporates that are partners and various entities that can run the facility once we have it, and all those things. And so that's kind of the next steps as the study had identified.